I call this meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
John Moreland.
Here.
Owen Curley.
Here.
Alexi Gonzalez. Here. Jeff Trular.
Here.
Todd Smith. Jennifer Williams. John Metz.
Here.
Thank you. The Board of Adjustment meetings are quasi-judicial in nature. All decisions of the board will be based on competent, substantial evidence, including testimony provided in this meeting. Any person who is not an applicant or agent who wishes to speak will need to fill out a speaker's card located on the side table by the door and turn them into the clerk. Each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak on each item. Please refrain from speaking from the audience, and applause or cheering will not be allowed. And lastly, please silence your cell phones. Moving on to approval of minutes, we actually have both of the May meeting minutes to approve, so if everybody's had a chance to do so or to review, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the Board of Adjustments minutes for May 2nd and May 17th, 2023. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes have been approved. Is there any correspondence?
Through the chair, yes, there is an email related to item ending in 39, and then a petition related to the item ending in 42.
Yep.
That's for you.
Thank you. And we have one case of old business this evening. Can we call the old business case, please?
Board calls BOA 22-100092, property address 1201 3rd Street North. Motion to consider 34-377 for 6 on-site parking spaces in lieu of 14 required to allow for construction of a 2nd-story office space addition and a 3rd-story auxiliary dwelling unit to an existing 1-story office building.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none. I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant or agent please come forward to be sworn in and give your testimony?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Matthew Lentz, and my primary residence is 2380 Companion Circle, West Jacksonville.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind just providing a summary of your request and then any information that you have since the last time you came before our board.
Sure, happy to. Thank you. So when I first met, this particular motion, as spelled out in addition to the explanation of the variance application, had been discussed. And what I experienced was a momentum of yeses and then some pause towards the end when the board was discussing it. So since that last meeting, it was, let's go around to the neighbors, talk to them, see about getting ground leases and that kind of stuff. A lot of talking to Christian recently, and it seems like, I think, maybe revisiting the idea and having a visual with it, having a conversation before getting so ingratiated to request that kind of demand, not demand is such a strong word, but making a request like that from my neighboring businesses. I've had preliminary conversations. There's been some verbal interest that they would be willing to help out just as a neighbor of the community. One of the things I was thinking about maybe proposing is rather than doing a 2-story addition, perhaps doing a 1-story. And so that way the request isn't as big and burdensome on the board from a variance perspective. And then to kind of put a visual to that. So where the red arrow is the business building that's in question. And this is of no fault of y'all's, but just to add a human element to the decision. When I purchased the building, I've got the original survey, and my assumption, and it was naive of me, was that all of the parking spaces that are on 11th Avenue North were included in the purchase of the building. I came to learn as I've matured that that is not my property, that's business property or city property. So I've officially got 6 that's facing east towards the ocean. The requirement at hand would be if I effectively doubled the building by sizing it 1 extra story, I would have to double the parking. So the request would be, could I potentially use the 6 spots that are on 11th Street as those 6 spots to qualify for the parking for the second piece of the building? We've also got 2 spots that are in the front of the building, and each of those 8 spots are all used primarily by tax advantage customers. To help add some color to that, if we look at the commercial buildings around the area, directly across A1A is a veterinary clinic. To the diagonal left, if you're facing A1A, are basically a tattoo shop and a smoke shop. Directly across 11th Street is actually a client of mine. I've seen a client of mine in each of these meetings. All have adequate parking relative to the number of office spaces and the type of commercial business that they run. To the east side of me is a chiropractor that's only in there 3 days a week, that holds 3 offices and it's 1 chiropractor, and he has 7 spots in front of his building in addition to the spots that he owns and land on the back and a garage. So from a necessitation of parking perspective, that's the summary of all of your commercial parking. Then you've got residential condominiums that have plenty of parking, and I mean, I know that's very opinion driven, but just what I'm trying to communicate is that I understand rules, I respect rules, and I'm not trying to paint a picture of anything that's flagrant, egregious, or nefarious outside of some kind of crazy request. I'm trying to build data around the reason why I think it is a rational and a relatively decent request. Beach parking all the way down at the end of the street, there's ample beach parking in the parking lot designated for the beach, and everything between there and tax advantage is all residential. So the request being asked is effectively the way that the parking lots are being used for the business right now would essentially stay the same. There's only tax advantage customers that park in those 12 spots. Since we've had these meetings, I've monitored it, I've analyzed all of the tax returns that get dropped off versus the tax returns that actually come in for appointments. I've analyzed all the data that Christian recommended that I analyzed, and I would stand here in good faith saying that the request is not like an unreasonable request by any stretch of the imagination. If I was to go perhaps and negotiate, if maybe we just built up 1 floor instead of 2. I think 2 may have been a little bit on the optimistic side of a request because of the fact that it would have eaten up those other 6 spaces and then potentially 2 other spaces. Could we potentially take 1 step forward and do the request for just 1 level up and then just use the variance that I'm requesting on the 6 spots that are already there, already in use and have been since 1998? I promise you that I've only seen 1 other person park in those parking spaces, and it was a lady on the weekend who had broke down in a Sprinter van and needed an actual tow truck. Everybody else that's ever parked there, I've always seen that they're tax advantage customers, and not my employees, but our team member use the back spaces pretty regularly. Sometimes we'll park on the side if they're just kind of in and out real quick. So, you know, I respect rules, I appreciate rules, I think they're in a good place for good reason. I think left to the human element, people would exploit them, they would take advantage of it for their own self-centered desires. You know, so I'm trying to be honorable and respecting that, but also seeing that often in life there's some room for discussion and negotiation as well, and I'm like humbly requesting that maybe we could have that conversation. Being a business owner in Jacksonville Beach has been one of my lifelong dreams. I was able to fulfill that in 2019. This business is at the next chapter where we do need to do something as far as the space and capacity, even if it's just storage. I want to stay in Jacksonville Beach. Like I mentioned, every one of these board meetings that I've been to discuss this with y'all, there's been a client of ours that's in this building. We service the local community. The reason that we want to stay there is because we are part of a staple of Jacksonville Beach. We've been here for a very long time. I did explore other options to show you that I'm operating in good faith. The only other option that I could potentially see that's on the east side of A1A is basically right next to Hilligus, Chipnick, and Hood. I have a very deep reverence for Mr. Hilligus and what he's done for this community. He's a CPA that I aspire to be as a young and up-and-comer CPA. I think it would be a little bit tasteless and ungentlemanlike to move another CPA business directly next door to his. So from a commercial respect perspective, I think the locations of our particular practices are spaced out adequately as it is. And so it would render in its current state, I either relocate out of Jacksonville, Florida, or not Jacksonville, Florida, but Jacksonville Beach, or just do some construction and try to optimize the space and continue into the next chapter of the business is basically where I'm at. So I don't have a bunch of ground leases that I can put in front of you. I don't have a bunch of things that I could do to strengthen the case, but I just felt like having a visual next to what was being requested may help paint a picture that I'm also not doing something that's overly unreasonable or irrational request by any stretch of the imagination.
So,
Further, if it's okay, I apologize, I don't want to ramble on too much, but My understanding is that there are some movements that perhaps they will eclipse in 2024, where I think the heart and the spirit of where Jacksonville Beach is going is to help, try to navigate this wording correctly, but in exchange for like upkeep, landscaping, respecting the property, the variances, or the parking requirements are essentially going to be a little bit on the lighter side as time goes by. You know, so I'm kind of hopping into that spirit as well, where obviously you guys have intentions to want to help the local businesses in the local community, so I know you're not up against not wanting to do that for us. And so I tried every which way I possibly could to think of ideas to come up in front of you and have like a great solution, but I really don't have much except for just telling you that it's my dream to do this, and it's something I really have a heart and passion to do, and I hope that we can get to some kind of agreement if maybe I'm willing to just do one floor instead of two for now.
And how many, aside from yourself, how many of your business employees are there on a regular weekday basis?
So that's a great question. I also mapped that out for you. If this conversation isn't stuck to memory, it's pretty, I did an executive summary in addition to the variance application. I think Christian has a copy as well. There's myself, Teely, Brianne works from home remotely all but 2 days a week, Kevin, and that's it right now. And so we've got a bunch of storage because the Jetsons and the Flintstones kind of existed under the same roof for a little while, where I bought a business from a legacy CPA. They're very paper driven, they're paying their people by hand checks. All good, totally respect that. Trying to move a little bit more to the digital age, but we are from a licensure, insurance, and regulatory compliance, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? We're required to keep a bunch of files for a long time. It would be very expensive to turn all that digital. So what you do is just kind of hit the button and move forward digitally, but you still got thousands and thousands of tax returns you prepare over the course of this year business as well.
So the reason I ask is because it's been, what, 6 months, I think, since the first time you came before us?
It's been actually a little bit longer than that. And part of the reason y'all are gracious enough to give me that amount of time is because the tax season kind of.
Right, so my question is, and I remember that conversation back then, I think at least a concern of mine and maybe of some of my fellow board members was if you have 3 to 4 employees there on a daily basis and you have 6 on-site parking spots. Now that you have made it through busy season, and I know you did summarize this for us already, so I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat yourself, but can you speak at all to how much parking was or was not a problem for you with only those 2 or 3 additional on-site spaces and having clients come in?
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate you wanting clarification for that, because I realize my passion may have like skipped over that and not touched on it as deeply as I could have, but I took the data as an accountant, right, and noticed that if you think about the tax serving professionals that are in the building, albeit you mentioned, okay, we'll call it 4 people, 3 days a week, 2 of those are clerical, front office. One of them is bookkeeper, which is primarily remote, and then there's 2 tax serving professionals. So at a maximum, you would have 2 people in a meeting at a time. The 2 tax professionals, I'm the early bird, he's the night owl. So from a meetings perspective, taking all the various stuff off the table, all the parking stuff off the table, just to culturally align people doing partnership in one business. I get in there super early, I start my meetings super early, and I'm done with my meetings by lunch. He starts his meetings after lunch. So assuming they both overlapped, you would have at a maximum 2 people holding a tax meeting at the same time at any given time. Then let's just say 1 or 2 people are coming in, just in a busy time in the middle of the day, 1 or 2 people are coming in to pick up their tax returns that have been completed and signed for them. They're just in, they pay, they sign, they ask whatever questions they have, and then they go out. So the odds of there being parking capacity in the current situation are pretty slim. And I feel as though there was a preparer that was there when I had this initial meeting. That person has since moved on, and I think that has actually moved that particular concern sort of in a more positive momentum than it was when I had originally addressed that question.
Actually, I've got a
Thank you.
question.
Go ahead.
If he agrees to.
And Joe, make sure you turn your microphone on, please, and speak closely to the
If he
microphone.
agrees to only putting 1 extra story on the property, given the fact that we have a 35-foot height limit, is he bound to that, or could he go ahead and say, regardless of what, how we stipulate in the motion, can we limit him to just one additional story?
You couldn't necessarily limit it to one additional story from a height perspective, but the parking is immediately tied to the use, which is tied to the square footage.
Okay.
So right now, the original proposal was to put a second floor of additional office, which would take that 6 parking spaces and ramp it up to 12. And then the third story was going to be a residential dwelling unit, which would be the 2 additional spaces. So it would depend on how that space was utilized, because it's based on use. But if you guys said maximum 12 spaces or whatever you decide, that would limit how much square footage the building could have. So if he wanted to make a 2-story addition that was half the size of the building, he could technically do that, but the square footage is ultimately going to be the thing that drives the number of parking spaces.
Am I allowed to say something about that? Mr. Moore, I just feel compelled to share that, like, I wouldn't do that. And I know that you don't have anything in front of you except my word, but if y'all want to put whatever you want into that build out to where y'all have a sense of comfort around granting that variance, I wouldn't turn around and, I don't know what the word is, but I wouldn't disrespect that, right? To show that I've been serious about this whole situation, I even asked him probably, as he's been trying to, you know, teach me the reasons for a lot of these things systemically, I said, why won't you just sell me the spaces? You know, I'm willing to pay for them. I mean, I know, but he said it could get into a lot of red tape, to put it shortly, right? But I mean, if that was the circumstance, there's also plenty of spaces over in the chiropractor's office, Mr. Tender, and I've had pretty voluminous conversations with him, and he's pretty willing to help out in a lot of areas, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm not huge on imposing on people and neighborhood businesses, and I know there would probably be in the back of their mind liability concerns, hey, you're parking on my property, what if you slip and fall, you know? Just, I feel like that would be the most seamless path forward, and if it's something that can be sold, I'd be more than happy to buy it.
I do have a question. If you were allowed to go with the original proposal, the top floor, the 3rd floor, was going to be like an apartment for you to sleep in during tax season, correct?
I don't think it would be exclusive to me. I think it'd be afforded to the other tax professional as well, because he does drive all the way out from Georgia to Greeley.
Right, yeah,
Yes,
just for,
But as opposed to like a rental unit that's
Yeah,
bringing in.
I mean, just if thinking about the sensitivity and the nature of what we do when we service a client, I mean, if anything were to go wrong in that area, we could be in deep stuff.
right, yeah. And then the 2nd floor, you were looking to expand your tax service, but you weren't necessarily looking to increase your number of employees. Is my recollection on that correct?
Yes, I mean, in the near term, that's absolutely correct, but I would be a dishonorable man if I told you that for certain, for in perpetuity, that if we added another floor, that there would be no other people that joined.
So if you were going to add more employees, how many do you envision? And I know that you don't maybe have plans to add more, but what would you envision? How many more would you add?
Based on our current client base and our revenue stream, especially after the aforementioned attrition that took place since the last board meeting, I don't know that we would be in an economic position to have any kind of growth in that area. But I mean, if we're talking within the next 36 to 48 months, I mean, 2 employees comes to mind. I think it's about just giving the current employee base more room to breathe, and then also from a storage perspective, being able to optimize the space.
And while you don't have ground leases in hand, you do have affirmation from your fellow neighboring property owners that they would be willing to accommodate you with parking leases, correct?
One of them is a client, and they said that they would, but I'll be honest, I've tried to reach out a couple of times since then without butting up against the brink of being pesky or annoying, and I haven't heard anything back from them. Now, from a full transparency perspective, the client was a tax advantage client, but the gentleman that I told you had an attrition situation, he was servicing them, so
Right,
they'll continue to be clients.
For clarity, currently you're compliant on parking, is that correct?
Yes.
So if the building was to go 2nd floors, and I'm trying to understand, because I didn't see a second survey, you would have to pull into an ADA spot, would that be correct?
Right, yeah, any renovation is going to trigger.
Right, so
ADA
the
parking.
plan I'm seeing shows 6, I don't see a revised plan, I don't know how you fit 6 with an ADA spot. So technically, if we allow this, how are you getting 6 when you have to put an ADA spot in that spot? So right there, just to update the parking to ADA, you're falling out of compliance from the current building, is that correct?
I
I
want to
put my
say-
2nd plan with a new parking layout would show 6 spots with an ADA to gap the space.
Now, I wanna say that
We said on the south side of the building, but I don't see it on the rendering, on the plan here, but, because you said the south side of the building is your ADA. Again, it's historic, doesn't work forward in ADA anymore. Especially if you're renovating a build business to bring it up to ADA compliance by requirements. It's
Yes.
not- it's
I
not
believe
common for
that-
restaurant.
I believe that conversation did take place between me and Christian, and then the nomenclature that was around that got way the heck over my head, so I don't think I would be the best person to answer it.
Through the chair, I don't, so it's not really clear on the aerial here. They do have 6 spaces striped, but if you look at the survey, there's actually quite a bit of room right here. And I think it's somewhere around the neighborhood of 10 feet. So if they had additional 9 or 10 feet there, even if it's 5 really, they could convert that extra space into an ADA space. I mean, likely it would be this one as opposed to that one. because of the size.
Currently, the south side, I just didn't see it on rendering.
Right, I'm pretty confident that they can fit an ADA space without losing a parking space.
I hope y'all can appreciate the irony of the picture that's included in there, it has all full parking. Like, that's tough to sit here in front of y'all and tell you, but I will tell you, it's like, it's an anomaly.
Through the chair, can I ask the applicant a question?
Yeah.
If you did a second floor, would it just be office, or is the intent to still do half of it as a residential unit?
No, just office.
Just office,
Yeah,
okay.
the residential unit was, just more of like, hey, if we're gonna do one, is it possible that we can add that on? And it was like, maybe that's part of what the hangup is in getting the board in full agreement, because like I said, it went back to, a lot of people were on board, and a lot of people weren't on board. It turned into a really long conversation that I didn't understand. So,
Okay, so if that's the case, then the parking requirement would go from 14 to 12.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I have none, but I do have a question. If he advertised it as 3 stories, does he have to, so he can do less?
Well, again, the Board of Adjustment is really just looking at the total number of parking.
Right.
So the request was simply for the reduction in parking. You guys don't regulate the height, so he'd be asking for less relief because he would need 2 less spaces, so it would be fine.
And this is obviously a special circumstance because his second floor, by nature of his business, he would have to accommodate 6 spaces. But as we know, his kind of general plan is not to double the size of his business necessarily. He wants to use it for storage. So if we were to consider a motion to approve 6 spaces and move 12, could we condition it to be tied to his business specifically in case somebody else in 10 years comes in and does want to jam both floors full of?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do that with conditional uses for planning commission all the time. Anything that's a alcohol-related use that gets conditional use has to come back with a new owner. So it'd be the same thing here.
So it's the least requirement for space, this type of business.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 to 300. It's certainly one of the lower ones.
Okay. So it's tied to this.
How does that conditional use work at the point of transfer? Does he have to disclose that during a sale? Is that something that after somebody acquires the property before they can open, they would have to come back to the board to get the same variance? I mean, this parking variance seems pretty structural in nature. They would already have the building and not be able to use it. How would that play out?
So in essence, if there was an existing variance that was tied to, I would say in this case, either the specific type of business or the business itself, it wouldn't run with the land. So it would be something that if somebody else came in, they would have to, based on their parking demand, based on their use, either seek a new variance or put in a lesser intense use in that location. With conditional uses, it's basically the same thing. Typically, it's found during the due diligence period. The buyer's agent will have a zoning verification company request a letter verifying the stipulations of the property. But ultimately, it'd be theirs to disclose, yeah.
Any other questions? All right, you can be seated for now, and I will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards on this item?
No speakers cards, and we'll go to correspondence.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card but who wishes to speak on this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 22-100092, conditioned on the use of the building as a tax preparation office and/or CPA office. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met all the standards for variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to amend the previous motion to reduce to a request for 12 spaces instead of 14.
Is that, Christian, would that be necessary to condition it to 12 versus 14? Because we're not changing the number of spaces that we would be saying he's allowed to use.
Well, I think the relief you were granting initially was for 14 based on a proposal of 2 different uses. I think it's probably, it ties him to just the commercial use or only allocating that space for that second story or something along those lines. Excuse me, so, I think it makes sense, because it is a limit that he's proposed by reducing the size of the structure.
Okay, so Matt's motion is on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote on the motion to amend the existing motion?
John Mullen,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
No.
Jeff Trular,
No.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
No. Okay, that motion failed, so the original motion on the floor is for consideration of 6 on-site parking spaces in lieu of 14. Is there any discussion?
There was a condition associated with that.
As conditioned, based on the proposed use as a tax preparation office. Thank you, Christian. Any discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Mullen,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular, Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. Your request has been approved as conditioned. Can we call the first case of new business, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100039, property address 1848 Evans Drive South. Motion to consider 34-336 E1C3 for a rear yard setback of 16 feet in lieu of 30 feet minimum. 34-336 E1E for lot coverage of 42.58% in lieu of 35% maximum to allow for a new side addition to an existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant or agent please come forward to be sworn in and give your testimony?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Michael Cowart, 1848 Evans Drive South, Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you. Can you tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
We're looking to put an addition on, and as the conditions were laid out in the analysis the staff did, and there were some things that seemed to be a problem with being in alignment from when it was built back in the early 90s. So I did read through that. I saw the staff recommendation, and we certainly are amenable to look into to get back closer to the 38% with doing some hardscaping and some permeable materials.
So were this request to be approved at 38%, you would be amended to 38%, you would be able to achieve your
Yep.
results? Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Just kind of understand, lot is
Make sure you turn your mic on.
regular
was trying to understand the hardship to it.
Through the chair, at least what the gentleman was referring to is the existing house is built behind the 30-foot setback
Right.
to the rear, and it's currently at 38% lot coverage.
Okay, existing, the hardship is it's the existing structure, right?
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I'm kind of hearing.
And this wasn't in the staff report, and I suppose it doesn't necessarily affect what they're trying to do, though maybe it does. It is a slightly oddly shaped lot, in that it's
Recognize that.
pie-shaped to a degree.
Have you spoken to your neighbors about your plans to put an addition on the side?
Yes, I have. On the east side of my house, my next door neighbor, one of my next door neighbors is here with me.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none, you can be seated for now, and I will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards?
We have a speaker's card and we have an email.
Let's do the speakers card
Okay,
first.
let's do the speaker's card first. I have Earl and Belva Parker.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
William Parker, 1214 Blue Heron Lane North, Jacks Beach, Florida. And I'm his neighbor from behind, which we never meet because there's an easement and a big ditch. What do I do? Just tell you my problem? Well, I'm sure he's aware of this too, and I don't want to interfere with his construction. I'm mainly concerned because I live in such a sensitive flood area, the sanctuary. And, you know, the easement behind us, even though it's, you know, everything drains into that. So his neighbor to the west of him made an addition as well, did an addition. And I just want to make sure that whatever ground that these improvements are going to take up aren't going to hinder or cause more flooding problems. I don't know if they will. I know I see the restrictions here. But that's what I just wanted to go on record as saying that it's a very sensitive area. And I've spent over $50,000 just for flood mitigation in my backyard. So it's really important. It's a sensitive issue, not only to me, but every home that runs right behind their property. On North Blue Heron Lane and West Blue Heron Lane. Not to mention the other flooding issues we have, which we're working diligently on. So basically, again, no, I have no problem as long as it's not going to create. It's, you could
I'm sorry, really quickly, sorry. So you're welcome to come up when he's finished and you can be sworn in and make your comments. He's still on the clock, he's got another 48 seconds, and then you're welcome to
I'm very
come.
comfortable with it for 58 years now. So I just do what I'm told. And I guess I'll just let her come up. But mainly I'm concerned about, you know, flooding issues in our yard. And again, anything we can do to help him get this through, if it's not going to take that, fine.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Ms. Parker, would you care to,
Yes, thank you.
and you can be be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name and address.
Belle Parker, 1214 Blue Heron Lane, Blue Heron Lane North, Jacksonville, Florida.
And please make sure that you speak into the microphone, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay. Right behind our house is a ditch that is supposed to be flowing. It doesn't flow anymore. It's stuck. And nobody cleans it out. The city used to, but they don't do that anymore. They say, no, that belongs to your neighborhood. That is our main problem, why it floods. I mean, one of the problems. But our neighborhood has tried, with help from people that know how to do this, with the lakes that we have in there, they've got things to stop, them from coming up so high, and just done all sorts of stuff. And this last flood that we had, I think it was in September, October, we had just put all the new sod down and the stuff that we did to build up our yard. And our backyard flooded, but it came right up to the house, but it did not come in, and that's the big thing, we don't want it to come in. It came in back in 2016, and we had to move for 2 years. So it's just, it's a major, major thing. So when we saw this, we thought, oh gosh, is that gonna do something? And it's just scary to us, and we want to find out more about it. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak on this item? You're welcome to come up and speak, and then just make sure that you fill out a speaker's card that are found at that table and turn it into the clerk before you leave the table by the door, sorry. Yes. And you can be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Jacob Roberts. I live at 1834 Evans Drive South. So I am directly would be east of their house. On the house that in the other picture you could actually see the driveway next to it. And Judy and Mike have told my wife and I exactly what their plans were. And based on the size of the lots, the pictures don't actually really give you an idea. They're actually far larger than most lots here in Jacks Beach. Compared to where I previously lived, where we had an exception where we actually had a Florida room that went right up to the property line itself and was approved by a neighbor. Even with their addition, there's probably 40 or 50 feet between their house and our house, where their addition would actually end up at, which you can't even see our house in that picture. Other than that, I would like to speak about the flood that the previous lady had just mentioned. My wife and I had just moved in to the house at the time, and of course that was quite a panic situation for us. And I can honestly say that I know Mike and Judy were actually out of town at the time and didn't actually see how much flooding happened at that particular time to their property. And I can tell you that where their house is and where the addition is, there was no flooding at all. So they would not be offsetting any water to us or any neighbors based on that, just the elevation of the house and where they plan on putting this addition as well. Other than that, that's about it.
Is there any else in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card and wishes to speak on this item? If so, please fill out a speaker's card before you leave. Hearing none, we do have an email.
We have one email from Angela Mitchell, dated June 2nd, 2023. Subject, planning hearing BOA 100039. Hello, my name is Barbara Kopek. I live at 1841 Evans Drive South. I'm writing in regards to the public hearing on June 6th, BOA number 23-100039. I'm sending my approval for the home addition on 1848 Evans Drive South. Thank you, Barbara Kopek.
All right. Would the applicant care to come up and address any of the statements made during the public hearing?
Yeah, I do understand the tidal creek that is back there along these properties, and there is some issues with the drainage and how it affects mainly the homes in the sanctuary, and certainly for that reason, trying to be a good neighbor, we certainly do want to get as much pervious material as we can for where we have concrete covering our lot.
I have one question on that. Christian, addition is small. Would they be required to have water management installed in something this small? A typical house would make sure they have gutters and downspouts installed. Would they be required in a project this size?
Yeah, I mean, they would have to do the drainage that would be generated by the new addition, in essence.
So the city will look into, I'm just trying to answer some of the questions in the audience, that they're looking into this from the city side to help make recommendations, swells, whatever it is, to minimize the drainage. Thank you.
Yeah, it would either be kept on site or it would be pushed to the street.
Right, so reverse the other way. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, you can be seated, and I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 23-100039 with lot coverage of 38%. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met all the standards for a variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I thought it was very gracious of the applicant to reduce his request for lot coverage so that it would basically be his existing lot coverage.
And I think with the input from the city, I think they could probably improve the drainage from the house. Push it forward with a swell or something, improve the current situation.
Right.
If the lot coverage stays the same.
And I would just say the hardship, as identified by the chairperson, is that it's in a shaped lot.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
John Woolen,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes, your request has been approved as amended. Can we call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100040, property address 1612 Tanglewood Road. Motion to consider 34-336E1C2 for a side yard setback of 8.2 feet on the south property line and 7 feet on the north property line, in lieu of 10 feet minimum, and 34-336E1C3 for a rear yard setback of 5 feet in lieu of 30 feet minimum, and 34-336E1E for lot coverage of 38% in lieu of 35% to allow for a new addition, a rear addition, and attached breezeway to rectify existing nonconformities and existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant or agent please come forward to be sworn in and give your testimony?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Allison Valentine, 1612 Tanglewood Road, Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Thank you. And can you tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
So given the, year that this property was built, the current hardship is the 38% lot coverage and the rear setbacks. Given that, I think at the time it was built, they didn't have that quite yet. I think right now we are right at 35%.
And your lot is, undersized based on,
Yes.
7,500 feet, remember that right? Instead of 10,000?
And I guess this is partially a question for the applicant and partially a question for the city, but having it built as an attached structure, does that create stricter, setback requirements?
Yeah, in essence, an attached accessory structure, like this guy, although it doesn't actually meet the setbacks, has a minimum setback of 5 feet on the side and the rear. When you attach a structure to a house, even with a breezeway, it becomes part of the primary structure, so that rear setback changes from 5 to 30.
So then I guess my question for the applicant is there a reason that your, new structure needs to be attached?
We are making a mother-in-law suite, so in order to have a full bathroom, it has to be an attached unit.
Okay. Any other questions?
Have you spoken to your neighbors about this?
Yes. They are all for it and they don't have any issues that they have come forward with.
And I have a question for Christian. Since it's attached structure, this cannot be considered a multifamily unit down this property, correct?
Correct, and it wouldn't have a kitchen, it would just be allowed to have a full bath, so it would basically be an extra bedroom.
Can you just address the questions? It can't still become an Airbnb?
No, because you have to rent it as a whole unit. 'Cause
Correct,
of the house.
that's what's
Yeah.
clarifying my knowledge.
And it will be 1 story?
Yes. It'll be maximum, I think, is 15 feet. I think we're going 14 feet. And it will be fully lofted on the inside, but it won't have stairs. It will have a ladder.
Is there a reason it can't be positioned closer to the existing home to get more of that rear setback?
Not necessarily. It's just more of like an independent space type situation. I live with my 80-year-old grandparents. I want to be able to give them their privacy and independence as well as maintain my own. However, I'm not opposed to bringing it closer to the main property.
Because I think if you brought it, 3 feet closer to the main home, then that would eliminate the need for the northern property line variance. Am I reading that correctly? Because she's asking for 7-foot setback on the north property line.
Oh, that actually relates to the existing house. Its side yard setbacks are non-conforming.
Because currently the shed is 2 feet off property line?
Oh,
Of the
okay.
current deck, or whatever's currently there.
I see now. Okay, so the rear yard setback, there's really no way to rectify that, even if it was,
Well, the rear yard is the one they could adjust.
well, they could adjust it, but not to the point where they wouldn't need a variance at all.
Correct.
Right.
Just for clarity, the north is this way, and the shed is to the west.
Okay.
And you spoke to your neighbors in the west?
Yes,
Any issues there?
no issues.
Because they're encroaching on, okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
I've had
You can be seated, and I will now open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards?
no speakers cards and no correspondence.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak on this item? And if so, please fill out a card before you leave. Hearing none, I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 23-100040. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met all the standards for a variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I think you have an undersized lot. It's just not really asking for much in the way of an increase in lot coverage, and there are some existing nonconformities that need to be rectified.
And I know that I'm the one that asked about making it detached as opposed to attached, but I think the benefit of the applicant requesting an attached structure is that it keeps the future density of the property down, kind of ensuring that it will be all people kind of living in a single family home versus turning it into a multi-unit property. So in keeping with the standard of minimum request.
Yeah, my only concern would be that I don't think that the requested setback for the rear is the minimum, and I think that you could achieve what the applicant is looking for just by moving that closer to the home. That'd be my concern at this point.
Christian, is there a certain amount of space that an attached structure, if it's conjoined by a breezeway, that it has to be a certain distance from the primary structure?
Only in so much for potentially something like fire code, which we're talking maybe 5 or 10 feet. I don't know specifically because the attached breezeway might change that calculation. That's usually for independent structures. But I would say it could certainly be closer than it is. How much, I couldn't say for sure.
I mean, I guess the benefit of having it built where it is that there was already a shed there. So in terms of impact to the neighbors, it's essentially the same.
Or I think having a resident next to your fence is a little different than a storage shed, and I think she's talking about a ladder to a climb-up space that could eventually have a window. That's a bit more intrusive.
Any further discussion?
I think it's just following up. I mean, currently the shed goes across the easement, and they're moving it farther off the easement, so they're not into the easement any longer, so I was okay with that.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jeff Truitt,
Yes.
John Moran,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
No,
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. Your request has been approved. Can we call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100042, property address 3527 Ocean Drive. Motion to consider 34-336 E1E for lot coverage of 40% and lieu of 35% maximum to allow for construction of a new single-family dwelling.
As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant or agent please be sworn in to give your testimony?
Please bring in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Brad Lester, driver McAfee Hawthorne in Devenow, Suite 1200, that's One Independent Drive, Suite 1200, Jacksonville, Florida, 32202. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for queuing the presentation up. Is that the point you're in?
Yep,
You want to move the slides?
he does it all.
Great. And I've got my team here, including the architect. We do have a variance request for lot coverage, but there is a story behind this renovation and redevelopment of this lot, including the architecture behind it. The request is an application for a zoning variance for lot coverage up to 40% to allow construction of a new single-family home. The variance request to redevelop the property is made up of 2 lots, and they are irregularly shaped. Lots built over time since at least the 50s. The lot coverage then was calculated at 7,200 square feet, which was 48.9% coverage. And so that property's been demoed. If you've driven by it, you've seen it. The lot coverage for the proposed structures and improvements is calculated at 5841 square feet, and that's now reduced to 39.7 lot coverage. The lot coverage comparison equals 9.2% reduction overall. That's a very positive thing. You can see the lot there. It's made up of 2 lots of record, regularly shaped, not really conventionally shaped in terms of the geographic position of the ocean and the street. This is just a zoning map, as we all know it. There's 3527. Talk about the ocean front properties in the zoning destination. This is the previous home's footprint, and it's in concert with the adjacent structures. Basically, this is the lot, and here is the 2 lots, so that's divided by the 1 property line. And then this is the setbacks, the normal setbacks, 10 foot on either side. And you see the previous home went kind of right through that. Our structure is very similar when we put it down there. This is really hard to see, I understand that, but I've got it blown up on the next slide. The property up on top is the previous footprint, so you can see the 14,000 square foot plus lots. And then this footprint was 7,000 plus square feet. The new one, as previously described, same lot, 14,000 square feet, and we're just over 5,000 square feet. You can see the footprint here, and I'll show this more in our architectural embellishment. But you can see the property here. It's relatively similar, but we adhere to the setbacks, we adhere to height. We're asking for a nominal increase in the lot coverage. But what I'd like to focus on is this area in here. This house does not have a really strong presence and curb appeal in terms of being a request that is asking for 4% over the lot coverage, and I'll explain that. Here is the original home. You can see 7,200 square feet, 48.9%, and that's now reduced to 5,839 square feet home, and it's 39.7 square feet. And you see the differences there. That's a pretty significant jump. This is the architectural perspectives of the property. So starting at the curb, kind of from an aerial view. The next is actually showing, again, from the curb view, but this whole area is open right here. This is a pass-through area. So you do have the roof up here, which acts as clearly impervious, and it's got runoff and roof cover. But this is not, and this could be adorned in some more pervious type paving to accommodate that lot coverage request. But that's what makes this curb appeal great, is while we have over 25 signatures of endorsement from not only the abutting property owners to the north and the south, but across the street, and others around the entire neighborhood that are endorsing and supporting this project, is because of the curb appeal. The fact that you can see through this, and it really acts like the homes, each wing of the home essentially is sitting on its own lot, if you will. So it really doesn't have that kind of audacity of having a curb appeal that is, oh my gosh, they must have asked for 40% in lot coverage request. These are more architectural embellishments from the rear. This is an aerial perspective as well, from the beach side showing the pool. But again, you can see straight through to the street and the cars. So it lets light and air, and of course we can embellish that with some more pervious type of arrangement underneath. So it's a little more of a hybrid approach in terms of this roof not carrying all the way down. You've got that open area which we can certainly kind of add some nuances to help prevent the reason why we have lot coverage is to help not shed so much water out to our waterways and burden them. In conclusion, this is a rebuild with the same combined lots and generally the same footprint over the center line of what would have been side yard setbacks. And that essentially is taking up the lot coverage. And restrictions inherently increases the lot coverage percentage because those areas are part of the unified plan as they've always been. The variance request to accommodate this hardship is customary building over the center line, which are normally side yard lot lines and for the surrounding and abutting properties. It includes an overall net reduction, 9.2% in the lot coverage for the proposed residents. The size and shape of the lot is slightly irregular, and a lot coverage increase would also accommodate the proposed plan to be in character with the general style and context of what has existed on the property for over 50 years. The request is to increase the maximum lot coverage from 35 to 40%. Again, it's actually 39.7 for inclusion of all elements of the home, including the driveways, epay decking, hardscape, and other elements. The total percentage of 39.7, and the owner will strive to achieve that. However, based on final engineering, field construction changes, that's why we put 40% in there. Over 25 surrounding property owners, including the immediately abutting owners, have signed a letter of endorsement supporting this variance. And I've included that, I sent that email in, but I have the actual hard copy signatures here as well for the record. And understand that would not be a negative impact or nuisance on their health, safety, welfare, and livelihood. Again, focusing back on the architectural, it's kind of more of a hybrid approach to an architectural embellishment of a footprint because of that open air passway. So with that, I turn it back to you and we can go back to those drawings. And I've got my architect here as well if we'd like to kind of talk about that specifically. And I do have a handout, so if that was hard to see, I'm more than happy to pass these out to you. But I appreciate your support in this request. I don't think 39.7 is outlandish, considering what we've presented here and the fact that we've got support, and it is more of a hybrid approach too. When you look at the house, it does still look like it's straddled over the two lots because we have that open air pass through. And that's really more of the heart of zoning, letting light and air circulation through there. So I appreciate your support on this project.
Thank you. Well, I know you mentioned and our staff report mentions the benefit that this would result in a net reduction of lot coverage. What I failed to see in the request is a hardship because the lot, and obviously we know it's two lots, so the square footage that you're working with is well over the minimum standard. And I can appreciate that you're planning to develop the property in, a responsible way, in a way that preserves the line of sight and all of that. But I think just for our board's specific charge, I think that we would need to get a better understanding of what the actual hardship is that results in the request. That being said, I can appreciate that this does take into consideration all potential development of the lot, as opposed to, requesting, not making a request, keeping it at or below 35, and then coming back in 6 months and asking for a variance to put in a pool. That being said, can you demonstrate any hardship at the lot that we could consider?
Well, in this case, I think it would be the irregular shaped lot and the fact that it's less of a burden on the infrastructure to build one property, one house, one structure over what's customarily been the situation for many, many decades out there, as opposed to two residential structures. That's 2 meters and so forth and go on and on and on, which could be more per 7,000 square foot lot, more impervious at the end of the day. We've reduced it close to 10%. With the irregular shaped lot and putting the house back over it, and we've actually accommodated the architecture to kind of make it not be so burdensome on the curb appeal, if you will. We could, honestly, and we've been talking with the architect and the owners, and we're asking for 39.7%. What we'd like to do, though, is ask for consideration, potentially to 38%. And the reason why is we ran some calculations back there. For that area that's underneath, that's open to the sky, that will capture rainwater. Unlike if the house was completely structurally built all the way to the ground and it shed somewhere else. So by way of that, allowing that to capture, it allows it to perk down. And we calculated that to almost, about 1.8%. And that, we had asking for 39.7, about 1.8, that gets us to around closer to 38% because of that hybrid approach to the architecture. And we tried to make the most of the irregularly shaped lot as it's situated, and putting a house back that's been customarily built on over 2 lots, and the fact that we straddle that setback line, which normally would be the areas that you don't do. Untouched, uninhabited and unbuilt on those side yard setbacks. We're kind of sitting over 20 feet of that. I think it's a pretty modest house, pretty modest ask, but if the board would oblige, we think we can work that out. If that's, I understand the hardship aspect in this. It is slightly irregular, but all things considering, we're reducing it. Now, roughly 10% as far as what was there before. And that's a huge thing for Jack's Beach and all the drainage issues that we always have. So I'd ask for your consideration for that.
Any other questions?
Could you do something with the driveways and the walkways to reduce your lot coverage?
We did. We actually worked with the city of Jack's Beach staff on the distance between the Ipe decking as well, and then recalculated that with a little bit wider spacing in between to get that, let's say, not even a credit, but the rainfall to get through there. So we widened that and we accommodated that in our calculations. We actually, I don't know if you can see it here in this washed out imagery, but we've done that here where we've got, I'll go back to the driveway in the front, sorry. So this is a decent perspective, but let me get a little higher here. Here we go. So we've got these strips going across here, and that inherently will help to kind of allow the water to perk down into the ground instead of shedding over it. So we have accommodated that. I think any more than that, you run the risk of maybe starting the driveway to start crack. But we've accommodated best management practices from a drainage aspect, and we realize that the lot coverage is really the crux of maybe not only the massing and the scale of an architectural theme out there, but maybe the drainage and the impact of the drainage and the burden. I think we've accommodated that, but more importantly, the architectural, and that's why over 25, I think it's 27 actually, immediately abutting neighbors all surrounding us support this project because we're not building this monstrosity. You can actually see through it. It feels like two separate houses. So it's more of a hybrid approach, but we have done some kind of cut through the driveways to allow some impervious to go through there. I'm not sure, we could probably do a little bit more, but we've run the calculations on this and we think it works really well.
Could you go to the overview of the lot?
Yeah. And that's the old footprint, but.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Help me understand how that's in a regular shaped lot.
Well, because it's not perfectly rectangular. As you can see, there's slight irregularity in it. You know, and what's the definition of slight? I think that means it, but we can judge the merits of the angles, if you will. But it is slightly irregular.
Question for you. Elevations, I'm sorry, I haven't driven by this site. Is there an elevation upgrade to the front of this house? I'm not familiar with this exact location.
Elevate for like
Topography, does it climb up or is it pretty?
No, it doesn't climb up too drastic.
Most of those clip, right?
Yeah, it's, you know, there'll be fill brought in to accommodate this per the code and per FEMA, but no, it doesn't climb up too much.
So those are two driveways I'm looking at, right? One with the cross strips and the sidewalk on the
Yes.
to the right of it?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
And we did
So
that.
I thought it was all sidewalk when I first saw it. That's a driveway.
Yeah, we did that on purpose to kind of allow the punch through. Now, this is enclosed up here, so that's a walkway through the house fully. But this right here is the kind of hybrid approach we're taking to this property to allow kind of light and air through that area. But more importantly, capture any of the runoff that's going through there for potential perk in the future. As opposed to just walls going straight down and that water's got to go somewhere. That water can be captured there through some, you know, engineering measures and whatnot.
And did you apply for any credits in the driveway to the right for any kind of perk? Is there any credits or is that just straight and non-pervious?
That's a great question. Yeah, what is the material on this? Do we know the material makeup of that yet, that driveway? Is it 100% impervious?
And if your colleague is going to be speaking to
He
it,
might speak to it, yeah. Mr. Joe Crum, our architect. I'll let him introduce himself
thank
for
you.
the record.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address.
Yes, it's Joe Cronk with Cronk Duke Architecture. I'm at 1936 San Marco Boulevard in Jacksonville, 32205.
Thank you. Can you speak to the material that you're planning to use on the driveway and whether it might apply or whether it might qualify for any credit of lot coverage?
Yes, ma'am. So we've started to look at those measures that Brad was talking about to use some semi-pervious, some softer materials. Everything that you see on the left is hard, and everything that you see in terms of the sidewalk is hard in our calculations. The material that looks a little bit mottled is a semi-impervious paver. So we haven't even really started to look at taking that out. But it is necessary to get cars in and turning into the garage on the right. But like Brad said, once you get into that right, there's about 1,000 square feet that sits under, in between the two buildings, that is essentially gonna be soft, natural, native grasses, and that would accept, and the drainage from the front side on the east and the west side would drain into that area.
This, Brad Buster again for the record. And what the city's calculating is when you look down from the plan view, the rooftop, not what's underneath. That's why we had to tell this story here, is that you can actually see through that penetration, which helps not only for drainage purposes, but light and air. It actually helps the curb appeal so much better. That's why we got so much support on this project, as opposed to a big wall and just something conventional. This provides a neat view, and frankly, you can see all the way through to the sky and the ocean in the background, and it's really a hybrid approach. It's pretty awesome. I know awesome isn't a criteria, but
So
we're excited about it, and we know the neighborhood is too, by the way, their signatures. So.
I walk by there frequently, and I can tell that I would enjoy walking by, looking at that. But I'm really hung up on the fact that you don't have a hardship. It's not self-imposed. And that's the first criteria that we have to consider before we can proceed. And it's basically about 14,000 square feet.
Excuse my voice. Joe Gronk. Joe Gronk again. The hardship that we see, as Brad said, is that the lot north and south property lines are orthogonal to the street. All of the houses are angled at that same angle, whereas the east and the west property lines are angled with the coast. And with a narrow oceanfront lot, maintaining the orthogonal footprint of the house, like all the houses do, if you go back to what it does is it drastically cuts the east-west dimension available for the footprint. So you have to stagger where the engagement of the building hits the ground. And we've done that as much as we can by actually separating the building and offsetting the north building from the south building. But I think that's the hardship in our mind, is that if we had an orthogonal site, we'd be able to get a pretty good bit more footprint, whereas we have to offset it.
And I think our hardship is not only the foundation of an irregular shaped lot, slightly irregular, but also the fact that we're putting back a home with over 2 lots of record in its customary orientation, but reducing the impervious lot coverage area by 10%. And we're still burdened by the fact that because those 2 lot lines would normally have setback areas, we're going right over that. And so we think with this approach, there is no way to calculate this elevation with the pass-through in the code. The code just says you're sitting over it. There's nothing black and white in the code that says, we'll give you credit for what's underneath because it's open air. You could potentially grab, stormwater for percolation. That's the story behind this. So it's a plan view lot coverage area, not taking into consideration the vertical element of it all, in condition with this irregular shaped lot. So we hope you oblige, and we're proffering now from 39.7 to 38 to accommodate that little area right there.
I'd like to rephrase the previous question to a yes/no response, so I think it'll be easier for me to understand the answer that way. The piece on the right that is sort of a light gray, semi-permeable look to it in this rendering, has the permeability of that area already been factored into your request?
It has, but not underneath.
But not. And then I'll ask as well, if you can flip to the slide or just speak to it, if you consider the pool deck, it looked like there was a significant amount of decking as well as a covered area in the back. Is any of that something that you could consider a reduction on to meet that 35% standard in the code?
Well, architecturally, this is all, as a unified theme and a unified plan, is all built for a specific purpose. And I think that the ability to have this hardscape element out here for the customary use on the ocean front is really key to this, but more importantly, allowing not only the users of this property, but the entire neighborhood and literally the environment, rain, to be able to kind of penetrate through this opening area. So we've kind of invited that element into this architecture here, but keeping this hardscape is really key to the customary use of an oceanfront property.
And we have minimized it. You can see there's a minimum walkway around that pool right now.
And it's Brad Wester. When we found out about the EPA decking credit, we actually recalculated literally like quarters of an inch between every single piece of EPA deck and then recalculated and submitted our plans for that credit. So we're kind of already trying to kind of move that needle with that element. But clearly, you know, there's no way for the code to calculate that plan view down and what's underneath, and how does that capture and play into this whole theme? So that's why there was a story behind this, and it was important to show these renderings as opposed to just a plan view pitch for a variance. So while it might not be conventional from an ask for a hardship, this is clearly a hybrid approach to a hardship, and we hope you will oblige our request.
Thank you.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions?
Not this time.
Okay, you can be seated for now.
Okay.
And I will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards?
We have one speaker card from Steve Williams.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
Please state your name and address.
Steve Williams, 3731 Duval Drive, Jacksonville Beach. And I just want to stand up and wholeheartedly support the variance request. It'll be a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, hearing none, can we move on to correspondence?
We do have we have 15 signatures, actually more than that. We have 25 signatures on a petition that says, as a neighbor living near the property located at 3527 Ocean Drive South, I am in support of this variance application, BOA 23-100042. That's what is my signature below.
And that's the only correspondence? Okay. Would the applicant care to address any of the statements made during the public hearing?
Thank you, Steve, for coming up to say something. I would like to address the document I just submitted, which are hard copy signatures. Those do include immediately abutting and immediately across the street from the property. So those directly affected by the new mass of this property and the rebuild and whatnot. And of course, the entire neighborhood. So I just wanted to point that out. If you look at it, it's factual that the property owners are the ones immediately abutting and surrounding, and then the peripheral as well. So I think there's 27 on there total. So again, I ask for your consideration. I understand it's not a very conventional hardship, but it is a hardship nonetheless. And I think the fact that we're reducing it almost 10% in terms of impervious is really good for Jax Beach, building it as one lot compared to the burden on potentially two builds on two lots, or a build on each lot if you were to separate them. So thank you very much for your consideration.
I got a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
On the pool decking, you guys show half-inch gaps. Was it 25% lot coverage reduction?
Sure.
We actually do get 50% for that as well. So that would bring you guys down to just about 38%.
Okay.
If that were calculated properly.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, you can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 23-10004342, based on 38% lot coverage and based on testimony and evidence provided. The request has met the standards for variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have some. I think the first question is, I don't think they've, beautiful house, beautiful appreciation, I don't see a hardship, as you said. I think there's opportunity for adjustments still to be made between the size of the scale of this project is large. I struggle trying to support this at this point. Because just the conversation I had with this additional, they never calculated that variance. What I heard was they didn't calculate that variance of that credit on that sidewalk, or the secondary driveway. It's still taken at 100% by my what I heard.
Well,
Matthew asked that question.
No, I think he said that that has been calculated. I don't know.
Was that, Chris, was that calculated as 100% non-pervious?
Are you thinking about the
right
secondary
driveway? Yeah.
Yeah, it's shown on the site plan as being shell rock, so that would actually be 100% pervious. But he was, I think,
Oh, so
referring
it's
to
shell rock, okay. I
the
didn't hear
space
that.
underneath the building that is not considered pervious.
Okay, so correcting that statement, so I'm still struggling, and also we're okay with us reducing it from the original application, right?
Well, they were okay reducing it to 38% based on, the initial statement proposal made by the agent, but then it sounds like it could potentially come in at less than that based on Christian's recalculation of the pool papers.
I think what I heard wasn't that they were asking us to reduce it to the 38, but to think of it as a 38, given that they could get permit relief that the city wouldn't necessarily credit them for.
No, I think he said that he was okay with a 38%.
Right.
You're not part of the public hearing, so if you need to clarify that, you're welcome to.
Yeah, we are, there's nothing conceptual about it, we would go to 38.
You would accept
Yeah.
an amended
Yes.
approval at 38%?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we ran some numbers, literally sitting here for the first few items and thought of that again. And so we're able to make an amendment to 38, yes, thank you.
Christian, can I confirm, would the city consider anything underneath that breezeway as permeable, even if they ran drainage to it, or no, because there's a roof on it, the city wouldn't credit any of that?
Yeah, in essence, our code doesn't have an impervious surface ratio, which is what he's referring to. Most codes do, and it's one of the things we're looking at as we move forward with the code revisions. But currently, it is simply lot covered. It's not tied to drainage at all, so it's just a blanket. If it's covered, it's covered.
And so knowing that, you're still comfortable with the 38, that no matter what you did in that space, at this point, the city wouldn't recognize that as permeable?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. And the reality of it is, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is when we're talking about lot coverage, you can't discount the watershed of the property, because that's the biggest burden on Jack's Beach right now, not just the, oh my gosh, what's going on with that huge structure. It's really, what are the impacts to the city's infrastructure and then the surrounding residents? And we can prove, again, with construction and engineering submittals forthcoming, if we were to get this 38%, that there'd be no overland shed beyond that. So, yeah, we accept the 38%, and I appreciate that.
I think that there's a 3% difference between the 35 and the 38 they're talking about. If that's spread out over 4,000 square feet of excess space for an RS1 piece of property. So I think to some extent they've made some efforts to comply with the code, but I think that it still is a voluntary decision on their part in terms of what they're asking for, self-imposed.
Question for Christian. In this area, I know we talk about this beach area has such absorption rate that it's not typically it's the runoff, but would we run this off to First Street or would they run it backwards into the ocean on roof drainage?
It would have to go towards the front of the property.
It's required to
You
go
can't
front,
discharge
so it
it
can
in the
be,
ocean
it have to be absorbed in the front of the street. All right.
I share the struggle with the hardship. As I speak now, I'm struggling with the shape of the lot as the hardship. I do commend the applicant on the design and their efforts to reduce lot coverage from the previous existing dwelling, but I am struggling. I'm struggling.
Well, this is probably maybe a reach for a hardship, but I do think that there's some merit to the applicant's or the agent's argument about choosing to build one home across the two lots as opposed to building separate homes on each of the lots, in that obviously you have to connect the home across the middle, and the fact that they have been able to do that while maintaining all of the setbacks. The only thing that they've requested is, at this point, a 3% increase in lot coverage that essentially addresses the space that would be buffer space in between two individual homes on the lots. I am willing to consider that as, if not a hardship necessarily, then something that creates an irregularity on the lot that's, you know, something that has to be considered by the applicant.
In the same reference, we look at those houses we have approved them in similar lots, and we give them all the side setback relief, we give them lot coverage relief heavily.
Correct.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that too, I mean, yeah.
And again, the fact that, you know, all of the outdoor space has been accounted for, so we can, you know, we can rest somewhat assured that this is the last request that we're gonna see from this property. As opposed to, you know, when we, like I said, when we have people come and ask for 35 or 40% to, or, you know, 38, 40% to build the home, with a 6x6 pad in the back, and then, you know, they're gonna be back later with the new homeowner asking for a pool.
I guess it's too much of a reach, Christian, in the same sense that that area underneath the house, as shown and displayed, is not pervious. Could we put that in the condition?
I'm sorry, one more time?
As shown and discussed, the area between the two buildings is pervious. Yeah, I phrased that wrong. Should we put that in the condition of the application? Is
That
the
they would
That
have
the
to know
applicant,
the
yeah, because
property.
currently it's shown as, concrete, but they're saying they would do it as a green space.
green space, is that condition will get attached to this, is that?
Or we condition it to the plans presented.
Well, the plans presented currently don't show that, but that's what they're proposing, or at least the ones that were part of the application that I received, so. If they're willing to do it, I don't see any harm with conditioning it that way. Obviously, we would reference it at building construction phase when the plans come in.
Christian, I'm gonna say some numbers and I want you to tell me if I'm thinking about this correctly.
Please.
The lot, two lots combined is 100 foot wide by 150 deep. So if you think of them as individual lots, it's 50 feet wide by 150 feet deep. So that's 7,500 square foot in an RS1 with a minimum lot coverage is 10,000. So to that extent, both lots are undersized to that 10,000.
Correct.
So if you scale them to size, this request is still below the 35% of a minimum lot of that 10,000 square foot for the zone. Could potentially be seen as a hardship of an undersized lot.
It's still viewed as one piece, maybe not split the parcel. So I don't know if we could take that consideration. You split the parcel, then it goes. Right, they have the right to still split the parcels, but they not.
And the other advantage of the design that they've got is that it eliminates the side yard setbacks from
Yeah.
both lots.
Yeah.
It pulls it in, which actually increases the usable space.
So, if you split the house in half, or split the lot coverage in half, and applied it to each lot individually, you'd be at 38.9%, so this would be identical, basically. But they would, in fact, have a hardship at that point, because they'd be substandard.
But they would also have to take into account the side yard setbacks when they're going to treat this as
Correct,
two
yeah.
lots. Then that reintroduces the side yard setbacks.
Right, so there may be some adjustment to the design of the house, or each house, or the width, or there might be side yard setback variance requests, it's hard to say, but just in a pure lot coverage standpoint, it ends up being identical just over two lots instead of one.
The only reason I didn't bring it up is we were discussing, or there was discussion of the benefit of having one home versus two. So if you're thinking about there being two separate homes, that would be a factor in that consideration. If there were two separate homes, both of those homes would be able to claim undersized lot coverage and essentially get more permeable space under that claim potentially. And I'm just stating that this is one of the benefits to having a single home is they're not making that claim. They're not asking for additional coverage on the basis that the board might be able to consider versus just seeing it as the middle ground, not having the interim. I think it's worth noting.
And also, yes, from what we have heard from the agent and what we're able to, you know, calculate, exactly, it's 38%, but I think from a practical standpoint, it actually ends up being even less than 38% when you consider the green space that will be built in the breezeway area, as well as any additional impervious space, or pervious space rather, that wasn't calculated from the pool deck, so.
And I did want to answer one question that Owen had raised. If you took the driveway and the walkway and applied a 50% lot coverage credit, it still wouldn't get them below 50%, or 35%. It would get them closer to 36, maybe, but there is some credit kind of built in there already, so I imagine it wouldn't quite be that much.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? motion on the floor for
There is, yep.
38%?
38%.
Okay. With no further discussion, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Moreland,
No,
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Shular,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexis Gonzalez.
Yes. Your request has been approved as amended. Can you call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100045, property address 3839 Poinsettia Boulevard. Motion to consider 34-336E1E for lot coverage 51% in lieu of 35% maximum, and 34-373D for a parking area setback of 0 feet in lieu of 5 feet minimum to allow for expansion of the existing driveway and existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant please be sworn in to give your testimony?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Vanessa Weaver, and I live at 3839 Point Sienna Boulevard, Jacks Beach, 32250.
Thank you. Can you tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
Yeah, so the front of our house on one side has 2 drains that, so that's why we can't go on one side of the, we can't park at all on that side. The other side, where we're asking for the 0 setback, has rocks on it currently, and we're wanting to put pavers, and basically pavers would go on the 0 lot line up against our neighbor's pavers, and so there would be no grass there because they have a 2-story house, and it's just like a small sliver in between us, and all of the grass keeps dying, and I'm tired of, I can't afford to put grass there anymore. I put grass there like 3 times. And so we have a shower, an outdoor shower, and we just want to put pavers all the way down. There is a concrete pad that our AC unit sits on, and so we're just going to put pavers over it to make it look a little bit better and move our AC unit down a little bit, and that way we can maybe like set up a space where all of us can get outside and hang out. So the hardship is our lot's already small. We basically don't meet any code before we started. So our neighbors next to us were super close lived in, and we really just want to eliminate that grass area in between us, and put pavers there, and then pavers on top of the rocks that are already there, but they just keep sinking, and so we just keep having to fill it up again.
And so your neighbor that immediately abuts where the new pavered section would be has no issue with this?
No, she just asked me for tomatoes a second ago. I told her I was busy, so she's like, "Can I run the kids over for a can of tomatoes?" I was like, "I'm out." So yeah, no.
I just want to say thank you for coming to the board requesting this for papers just laid down.
Yes, I know. I told Christian, I was like, I'm a pharmacist, so I kind of do everything by the book. So fortunately and unfortunately, I have to do this too.
And you already have a garage, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. We already have a garage. Yeah,
This is just additional parking, which is.
Yes, ma'am. Really, I mean, honestly, it's just for us to get outside, the kids to play. So, I mean, even though we're on a dead end street, literally our kids, the whole neighborhood, the whole street, they stay outside. Our neighbors in front of their house, they even have a picnic table on top of pavers in their front yard. So, I mean, thankfully for COVID, we all know each other and we just all hang out outside all the time.
Any other questions of the applicant?
I've none.
I have none.
All right. You can be seated for now. Okay. And I will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards on this item?
No speaker cards and no correspondence.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak on this item? All right, hearing none, I will close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
make a motion to approve BOA 23-100045. Based on testimony and evidence provided, the request has met all the standards for variances outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
It's an undersized lot, non-conforming, and I think that the staff computed if it was a full-size lot, it would be only 34% lot coverage, so I don't think that they're asking for an overreach.
As well as the drainage issues on the one side of the property, which forced them to pave it on the other side, which then causes the lack of setback to be put in. All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Malone,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular.
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes, your request has been approved.
Thank y'all.
Can we call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100047, property address 2519 Independence Drive. Motion to consider 34-337E1C3 for a rear yard setback of 10 feet in lieu of 30 feet minimum to allow for construction of a new addition to an existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication?
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had one.
And I've had none. With the applicant or agent, please be sworn in and give your testimony.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Paul Zerlini, my current address is 9765 Hector Drive, Jacksonville, Florida, 32226.
Thank you. Can you tell us the nature of the hardship at this property?
Yes, this property has many, many hardships. Starting with the existing 1,196 square foot home was built in 1978, which was predating the current land development codes. Another hardship is the home was constructed at an angled orientation on the lot, which you can clearly see. Also, the existing structure is past that corner of the structure is past the current rear 30-foot setback. And the 9,336 square foot corner lot has a very limited build area due to the BRLs and side setbacks.
Thank you. I have a quick question that's more for the city, but is there a home size square footage minimum in this zoning district?
Yes.
I know it's 1,600 in RS2, I mean RS1.
1,200 here. Give me 1 second to find out. Yes, 1,200 square feet with a garage or a carport.
So we're actually under the,
square feet.
we're actually currently under the minimum.
And is the addition, I'm sorry if this was in the staff report, I missed it, is it 1 or 2 stories?
The addition would be 1 story. It would be a 680 square foot addition at the rear of the existing home.
Okay. Any additional questions of the applicant?
Have you spoken to your neighbors?
So I'm the contractor. I have the owner here, and yes, she's spoken to her neighbors, and she's going to speak after me if that's all right.
Any other questions for the agent? Would the homeowner care to come up? You'll have to be sworn in.
Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Natalie Brewster, and my address is 2519 Independence Drive, Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you. And can you just address if you've spoken with your neighbors about the project and what their feedback was?
Yes, so we've spoken to our neighbors behind and next to us. We are on a corner lot, so those are our main neighbors, but also spoken to our neighbors across the street, next to across the street, across the other street. So really, we're a really close neighborhood, so it's not something we would even consider without getting their feedback, because certainly they have to live with the construction part of it, and so we want to make sure they were supportive, and they are. So when we bought this house, we only had one kid, and then we had two and didn't plan on that, and this would allow us to stay in a great neighborhood. We can walk to Seabreeze, we're really active in the school, and would love for this to be considered, so thank you for your time.
Thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards on this item?
No speaker cards and no correspondence.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak? Come on up, and you will have to fill out a speaker's card before you leave, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Matt Dahlberg, 2604 America Avenue, Jacks Beach, 32250. I live directly behind them, and looking at the plans, I'd be most impacted. I wholeheartedly approve it. I understand their grievance, and I think knowing where we're positioned above them, it's about 6 feet higher, the direction of the expansion really wouldn't impact me at all. So I approve it.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to speak on this item? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 23-100047 based on the testimony and evidence provided. The request has met all the standards for variances outlined in section 34-286 Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
We have a non-conforming lot with an odd shape, and it looks like some existing non-conformities. I think I appreciate the fact that there's not an overreach on lot coverage.
Agree.
And I think this is not going to impact the drainage issue at all, because as the witness testified, and I'm familiar with, there is a big hill coming down Patriot Drive. So this will impact the rear neighbors at all.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that the existing structure doesn't really offer a lot of opportunity to add on without needing some type of relief from the setbacks, which they've already exceeded from the historical building, and knowing that the neighbor directly behind them has come to show support as the most impacted party, I think that mitigates the concern in that space.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
John Moreland,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Alexis Gonzalez.
Yes. Your request has been approved. Can you call the last case, please?
Board calls BOA 23-100048, property address 725 3rd Street North. Motion to consider 34-342E3A for a front yard setback of 8 feet in lieu of 10 feet minimum, 34-342E5 for 100% lot coverage in lieu of 85% maximum, 34-373B for a two-way parking aisle width of 8 feet 10 inches in lieu of 23 feet minimum, 34-373C for no turning and maneuvering space in lieu of required space for commercial parking, 34-373D for a parking setback of 0 feet in lieu of 5 feet required, 34-377 for one parking space in lieu of 8 spaces required for a new beauty shop skincare use located in C1 zoning district, 34-425A3 for 0 trees in lieu of 1 required tree, 34-425B1 for no landscape buffer adjacent to the public right-of-way in lieu of 5 feet required, and 34-425C1 for no interior landscape aisles in lieu of 1 required island to allow for the renovation and reuse of an existing non-conforming commercial mixed-use structure.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none. I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none.
And I've had none. Would the applicant please be sworn in and give your testimony?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please, your name and address.
Casey Lee, 840 Holly Drive, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250.
Thank you. Can you tell us the nature of the hardship at this property?
Yes. So the building was originally built 55 years ago in 1968 as A. David Florist. It was the first florist in Jacks Beach. The Davids created a business and a home for their family until it was sold to Mr. Harry Schnabel, who's actually here. He owned it and operated it for 35 years as the Seahorse Florist. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, he sold to Miss Ellen Peterson, who is also here. It's an iconic building. It's been a landmark on A1A. It requires much needed renovations in order to reestablish it on a commercial usage. I currently own Skin Spa on 9th Avenue North, and my intentions would be to renovate and find a future home for my business there. During the due diligence period, though, I've discovered major obstacles that would almost make it impossible for this building to be usable in any way unless it's granted. To be a functioning business that meets current code regulations, obviously with being built in 68. My intention would be to provide up-to-date fire safety, ADA compliance on the interior, as well as adding an ADA parking space on the exterior. The parking is an issue. I have secure. There's a gym next door called Black Hive, and I'm working with the owner Brent Parrish and on a shared parking agreement. He is 100% supportive. We just haven't gotten the document finalized yet. But he runs a gym, so his classes are in the early mornings and then in the evenings, and the spa is open by appointment only during the day. So he's very open to helping with that. The property, being a retail store for 15 years, had many customers, and there weren't any parking complaints. And I believe my client staff and the residents understand that, like, businesses on the east side of 3rd, you're going to walk a little if you need to. Furthermore, there are 3 apartments on the top, so the 6 spaces that are on the property, there's 3 apartments, so the 6 spaces are for the residences. And but in the addendums for the tenants, they actually agree and understand and have signed off on sharing the parking with business during the open hours of business too. The Hutchinsons, they're actually here too. They've actually lived above the commercial space for 17 years, and they're here in support of seeing a business thriving and giving it new life. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's a project.
Can you speak a little bit more to the nature of your business? You said it's by appointment only.
Yep.
How many employees would be there on a given day, and how many clients would you see?
So I have 4 treatment rooms, and I have, other than myself, I have 1 other full-time esthetician and 2 part-time. So typically the 2 full-time are there, so 3 estheticians plus 1 front desk, so 4 on a daily basis. And then we're not booked on the hour every hour, so the space isn't full all day anyway. Like we'll see, I see maybe 6 clients, the other girls average maybe 3 to 5 on their schedules. Mm-hmm. And they're some of the appointments are 30 minutes, some are an hour, but we don't have clients, they're not there over an hour. The appointments are an hour less.
Are the apartments or the units above currently occupied?
Yes.
Because I read it fell out of grandfather clause because this has been closed for a period of time, which
that's right.
Pushing front of us here today. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's how I understand it.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes. With the parking and the removal of the trees, I was all to get your ADA spot in, and
there's a fountain actually out front.
Right. So that's all be removed. And that one little.
Mm-hmm. That's where we were going to put the ADA spot.
The ADA spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see. Trying to get all this in.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Yeah, originally I wanted to build more treatment rooms, but I didn't need them, so I scaled it back to just the 4. Because I have staff that they want to come with me, so I told them they would have a room.
How big are the apartments that are, and they're all upstairs, correct?
There's, yep, so there's the commercial space on the ground level, then there's 2 apartments on the second level and 1 on the third. And I'm not sure what the square footage of them are. My architect's here too, so he can be,
But
he knows his
regardless,
business.
all of the residential units require 2 spaces by code, right?
That's correct, yeah. It's not based on square footage, just use.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you've been in contact with the owner of the gym.
Mhm.
Do you think that it would be possible to get an official shared parking agreement?
Oh, yeah, yep, for sure. We were just in the process of editing it and we just didn't get it done in time.
And you chose a gym because they do have customers in the morning and customers in the evening and
Right.
customers during the day, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've driven
It
by
mixes
this,
up, right?
I drive by this spot all day, every day, and I've noticed for a while that the gym, I think they're kind of restructuring their model too, but I noticed that they've got this, huge lot and all these spaces, so he was one of the first people I talked to, and he said absolutely he would help.
Yeah, I go by there several times during the day, and I do notice that it's busy in the morning and the evening, and not
Right.
during the afternoon.
Right.
Or late.
And Skin Spa's open, we're closed on Sundays and Mondays, open 10:30 to 6. And he said typically his classes are finished by 10:30.
Any other questions?
Just to respond to Owen's question, so according to the property appraiser, one of the apartments is 494 square feet, one is 650, and one is 312.
And I know that the request is technically for 100% coverage in lieu of 85% max, but Christian, that's an existing condition of the property, correct? Or
Correct. There are technically 2 palm trees that literally just poke through the concrete. I don't think they're a measurable amount of open space. But yeah, it's basically completely paved or taken up by structure.
Okay. Any other questions for now? All right, you can be seated for the moment, and I will open the public hearing. Do we have any speakers cards on this item?
No speakers cards and no correspondence.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak? And if so, please fill one out before you leave. All right, come on up.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Thank you. Number 1,
Oh, make sure you state your name and address for the record.
Harris Shovel, 3395 Zephyr Way North, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250.
Thank you.
And number 1, I've sat on this board many, many years ago. It's a tough job and you have my applause.
Thank you.
I ran Seahorse Forest, owned Seahorse Forest for 35 years. We made that building work. We had Easters and Mother's Day, birthdays, anniversaries. Yes, it was troublesome parking, but we made it work. Doggone, I don't know of any complaints. I'm asking you to grant these variances. It is, as Casey said, an iconic building. If the variances are not granted, that building virtually becomes useless. It can't be used for anything other than 3 apartments upstairs. I would ask you to consider the history of the building, what it's been used for in the past, how well it functioned in the past, and grant the variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak? Just remember to fill out a card before you leave.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this? Please state your name and address.
I am Neil Hutchinson, and my wife and I live in apartment C at 725 3rd Street North, building in question. My family moved to the beach in 1954, and I went to Atlantic Beach Elementary in Fletcher, where I met my wife, who had to go back home for something else, but we went off to graduate school and college, and I practiced law in Atlanta and Miami. And we moved back largely because of some elderly parents who have since passed away. We've lived in the building since 2003, and I don't know if anybody remembers what the neighborhood was like in 2003, but the gym was a really nasty garage, and there's still a lot of pollution underneath the gym building. But fortunately, Brent has improved that quite a lot. I work out there myself. It's a great gym. Harry's absolutely right. There is nothing that building can be unless there is a commercial space in the bottom. And my wife and I are retired, so we only have one car, which we share. So that's, we can cut down on the spaces needed. But it really is important for that building to be brought up to the level that you find on 9th Avenue, and then there's an interesting interior design store next to us. It's all white and had a lot of improvements to it. And if the building can be renovated on the first floor with a commercial space, then I think it will add a lot to the neighborhood. And the neighborhood's going up. We're seeing a lot of old buildings getting redone, and unfortunately, 725 kind of looks like it's unoccupied at this point because there's nothing on the ground floor. So I think it would really help the beach a lot, and that part of Jack's Beach, which is up and coming commercially, if the variance is granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who is not? Oh, all right, come on up.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Suzanne Judas, 2310 Ocean Forest Drive West in Atlantic Beach. And I'm here because I'm a client of Casey Lee's, and I know how hard she's worked to get to this point. But I encourage all of you, if you want to know what the building will look like after she has renovated it, go by her storefront on 9th Street. It's going to add tremendous curb appeal to that area of Jacksonville Beach, and she is an amazing businesswoman. So it will be a success, and it's a big success for the years she's been, and I've been going to her for maybe 5 years, and lots of our friends also. So I just wanted to let you know, go by 9th Street, look at it, see what that building could look like with her artistic talent. Thank you.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Ellen Peterson. I live at 109 2nd Street South, here in Jacksonville Beach. I grew up in Jacksonville Beach and went to all the beaches schools, graduated from Fletcher. I did move away back in '82, and I moved back to Jacksonville Beach in 2016. And that's when I bought the flower shop and bought the building from Harry. So I've had the building for 7 years. And because of COVID, unfortunately, in the lockdown, it was too much of a financial hit for me to be able to reopen the flower shop. But I do want to encourage you all, we really do want to work together to be able to revitalize that beautiful building that's been here at the beach and has been an icon here at the beach. And I just want to let you know that I am in full support of Casey as well, bringing her business. I have been into her skin spa, and it's a beautiful building, and she's done a wonderful job. And as a business owner, as we've already been hearing, and she would do nothing but the best for that building as well. Thank you.
And as a reminder, both of the speakers who we just heard from will need to fill out the speaker's card that's on the table by the door before you leave, and please submit it to the clerk. And I don't know if there's anybody left in the audience who has not spoken. Is there any other members of the audience who care to speak? And if not, I will close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 23-100048. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met all the standards for a variance as outlined in section 34-286 Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Just to let you know, my vote won't be pending upon a parking agreement because I don't really hold any length of gratuity on parking, so they can stop as fast as they start. So I always look at this as the structure itself. But I do see it's an iconic building. I'm trying to work through this is important. I do recognize that part.
Yeah, and I think having the context from the former business owner that when it was operating under the exact same circumstances as a florist, where the volume was probably a lot greater, certainly at peak times.
I agree.
If they had no issues then, and the tenant that we heard from has no issues, then I think that kind of gives you the context that they're able to function with the amount of spaces they have.
The only question I had, should we condition to the application's uses of the building, as we did in the past for the bridal shop, for example?
I would be amenable to that.
Well, I mean, we had a florist, and now we're going to have a skincare shop.
With the season rights, any commercial business, if they have transitioned, our vision is what if this building goes forward and continues to be going forward, they'd have to come back if they were no longer that same business.
And this being appointment only, you referenced like the bridal shop,
Yes, that was a good
something
example of
that
what
we
we
factored in
Yeah.
allowing them a lower number of parking spots, because they can obviously control, if they're appointment only, they can control how many people come versus other commercial spaces that are not appointment only, they might not have that same amount of control.
Condition upon the use as a skincare.
As a spa, I think that's what's listed.
Okay.
Yeah, spas and salons are classified the same way in the code.
Okay.
Yeah, I can list anybody coming in, say, I want to make a game room out of it or something else.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I was trying to condition to that.
I'll make a motion to amend the approval condition upon the use of the property as a spa or salon.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I think it's a good development project. Definitely would be great to see it come back.
And it's got history.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a
Uh,
great foundation.
If we condition it, are we risking the issue with the apartments upstairs?
No, because the request, as I recall, was just for the commercial portion, yeah, because they technically meet the residential requirement.
Okay.
Can we have a roll call vote on the amendment to the motion, please?
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
John Mullen,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Lexi Gonzalez.
Yes. So the motion as amended is now up for discussion. And is there any further discussion on the motion condition to use as a spa in the commercial space of the building? Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
John Mullen,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Matt Metz,
Yes.
Lexi Gonzalez.
Yes. Your request has been approved as conditioned.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Moving on to the planning department reports.
Your next meeting will be a Wednesday, it'll be June 21st. We have 5 cases scheduled, and just wanted to thank you all who came to the meeting last week. I think it was really productive. We got a lot of good conversation, and we're meeting with council tomorrow, so we're going to see the results of all those boards and wade through the topics themselves. But I think, as it was the last time, your guys' input is the most insightful, so thank you.
And
She's gonna be gone next meeting.
Okay.
I'll be at Boy Scout camp.
Sound like a plan.
I hope you make the cut.
is there any, I think, was 6 months discussed at the workshop the other night last week about when we might expect the new regulations to potentially be adopted by council?
I mean, in theory, the contract is through the end of the year. There are some extension periods built into that, but it'll really come down to when they get a draft ready for both documents and then going through the public hearing process. So final adoption, particularly for the comp plan, will have to go through a steep review as well, so that'll add some time. I'm optimistically going to say probably the early part of next year for final adoption.
And I'm sorry, I know we've been here forever, but it was hard not to think about some of the proposed changes to the code as we were hearing proposals tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be any process for people who make requests before, I guess I'm assuming that everything that was proposed the other night, as it relates to our board, would be adopted, but is there gonna be any sort of like, I don't know, what's the opposite of grandfathering? Like, there are people that, that have applied for the variances right before the new provisions have been adopted.
There isn't a standard practice in law that applies to government. I don't recall those specifics or the title. But basically, if you have something that is pending, then it can technically either apply or put things on hold. There's a number of ways of doing it. But yeah, if there's legislation pending, then either it might behoove people to wait, or there may be a process by which, if that's, if it's been adopted by council but hasn't gone through the state review yet or something like that. But I can find out more for you. It's a good question. As we get
I just
closer,
feel like some people are getting a little, I don't want to say cheated, but they're maybe not getting they're not able to take advantage of
for sure.
their code.
And I will say, looking at the results from the DOT exercise, increasing lot coverage was something in the neighborhood of like 82% before. So I think everyone recognizes it's an issue. So hopefully that will go through.
Thank you guys for indulging me. Anything else before we move to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.